This is Community Radio Networks. It is the first full day of summer, Friday, the 21st of June. And we have all the information that you need to take on this beautiful day today. And it's all coming up for you right here on Community Radio Networks, and we'll start with the world news coming up first. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news, read by Shabnam Matgil. The Supreme Court in the coming days will issue a flurry of potentially blockbuster decisions on gun rights, abortion access, social media content, homelessness, federal regulatory authority, the opioid crisis, and whether former President Trump and others can be prosecuted for trying to overturn the 2020 election. The High Court, which tries to dispense of pending cases by the end of June, has an unusually large number of decisions pending, particularly on hot-button issues. Given the current pace of opinions, the term could slip into early July, something that has not happened since the height of the pandemic. And the opinions will be dropping in the lead up to the first presidential debate on the 27th of this month between Trump and President Joe Biden. With the first presidential debate a week out, President Biden and presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump have begun cramming for the clash next Thursday night in Atlanta. Biden plans to work from the presidential retreat at Camp David in Maryland for several days and possibly up to one full week for intensive prep, senior campaign and administration officials there remaining engaged in somewhat more informal preparations. A new poll shows that President Biden and former President Trump in a dead heat going into next week's first debate of the 2024 election. President Biden heads to Camp David today to prepare for this first presidential debate with former President Trump. The debate will be moderated by CNN anchors Jake Tapper and Dana Bash and will run for approximately 90 minutes with two commercial breaks. Independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. failed to qualify for the June 27 CNN debate, leaving President Biden and former President Trump to face off one another. Former President Trump's huge May fundraising haul erased President Joe Biden's long-standing cash advantage as the two gear up for this rematch. And Trump's campaign had $116.6 million in the bank at the end of May, compared to $91.6 million for Biden. Former President Trump suggested in a podcast that was released yesterday that non-citizens in the U.S. should automatically get green cards when they graduate from college. The former president said he wants to grant these green cards to foreign graduates from U.S. colleges in an apparent softening of his typically hardline view on immigration, which is a key election issue. He continues his legal assault today on the criminal case accusing the former U.S. president of mishandling classified documents after leaving the White House, when his lawyers challenged the appointment of the prosecutor in the case. And an appeals court has denied former Trump advisor Steve Bannon's request to remain out of prison while he appeals his conviction on contempt of Congress charges. Alberto, the first named tropical storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, has dissipated after being downgraded to a tropical depression, according to the National Hurricane Center in Miami, but not before the storm dumped heavy rain and caused major flooding in parts of Mexico and Texas. At least 4 deaths have been blamed on the storm, which made landfall earlier yesterday. Although the storm had dissipated as of last night, Alberto still bringing torrential rains and flash flooding to northeastern Mexico. A heat dome threatening record highs this weekend from the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic. Above average highs combined with the humidity and little overnight relief will lead to dangerous heat conditions. Relief has arrived in New England to end the week, and others may see a downward temperature trend in the coming days. But it is fire crews that are bracing for flooding, lightning, and cooling weather as they battled a pair of growing fires that have killed at least 2 people while tearing through an evacuated mountain village in southern New Mexico, destroying an estimated 1,400 structures. Residents of the village of Ruidoso fled the larger fire with little notice as it swept into neighborhoods. The National Weather Service reported overcast skies with temperatures in the 60s today at a small airport northeast of Ruidoso. More than 1,000 firefighters in New Mexico took advantage of that break in the weather to get the upper hand for now on a pair of wildfires that have killed 2 people, destroyed hundreds of homes, and forced thousands to flee. It's time for the 2024 Copa America. With the United States as the host, the next few weeks will be jam-packed with soccer as North American sides take on Central and South American teams in a bid to become the best team in the region. It might also be Lionel Messi's last major tournament as the 36-year-old enters the twilight of a sparkling career. Donald Sutherland, a veteran actor known for roles in MASH, Clute, and The Hunger Games, has died. He was 88. Died yesterday in Miami after a long illness. Keith Sutherland, his sons, continue to write that his father loved what he did and did what he loved, and one can never ask for more than that, a life well lived. Rapper Travis Scott was arrested yesterday in Miami after an altercation at the Miami Beach Marina. The 33-year-old, whose legal name is Jacques Berman Webster, was charged with trespassing after a warning and disorderly intoxication. And a 17-year-old faces a charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in connection to the deadly shooting at the Juneteenth celebration in Round Rock, Texas. Officers arrested Ricky Thompson III of Manor, Texas, yesterday, looking for other suspects in connection to that shooting. 2 people were killed, including a former Mansfield resident, and 6 others were injured in this shooting at the Old Settlers Park in Round Rock near Austin. And a Garland doctor sentenced this week to 7 years in prison after he was convicted of running an illegal pill mill. Dr. Mendez and another doctor operated a medical clinic in Garland. Mendez was indicted in 2020 on charges of unlawful distribution of controlled substances. Prosecutors said that he was handing out hydrocodone and other controlled substances to people without any legitimate medical purpose and without conducting exams. Passengers on a flight from Las Vegas to Oklahoma City had a big scare overnight. A Southwest flight dropped to just 500 feet before reaching Oklahoma. The Southwest flight from Las Vegas dropped in altitude before it landed. And it did, though, land safely at the Will Rogers World Airport in Oklahoma City just after midnight. Southwest Boeing 737 that dives below 500 feet over Oklahoma neighborhood and triggers a low altitude alert came close to plunging into this neighborhood as it flew below 500 feet. The Boeing 737 plane there, a dangerously low flight of the aircraft from Las Vegas. It was clear to land at the Will Rogers World Airport. However, it passed by Yukon High School shortly after midnight, setting off altitude alarms as it narrowly missed homes in the residential area. And flight tracking data from Flight Radar 24 revealed that the aircraft had dropped to 525 feet above ground level, while still 9 miles away from its destination. The number of arrests by Border Patrol agents of people illegally crossing into the United States fell last month to the 3rd lowest of any month during the Biden presidency, while preliminary figures released show encounters with migrants falling even more in the roughly 2 weeks since the president announced new rules restricting asylum. The U.S. military has said it had destroyed 4 Houthi nautical drones and 2 aerial ones over the Red Sea of Yemen. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has told Israeli officials during a meeting to avoid further escalation in Lebanon amid this fighting in Gaza. And the Greek Cypriot administration has pledged not to provide logistical support to Israel in a potential war against the Hezbollah. Fears of a regional war rose after Lebanon's powerful Hezbollah movement said none of Israel would be spared in a full-blown conflict, and Israel said it had approved plans for a Lebanon offensive. And it is experts divided on the prospect of a wider war almost 9 months into Israel's vow to eradicate Hamas. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah has said no place in Israel would be spared our rockets if war began. Nasrallah's group has exchanged near-daily fire with Israel since Hamas's October 7th attack on southern Israel. But the fire from Hezbollah rockets, Israeli warplanes, and other weapons has escalated in the past few weeks. Israeli forces continue to pound Rafah and other areas across the Gaza Strip and engage in close-quarter combat with fighters led by Hamas. Malaysia and China have expressed concern over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and have stressed the need to protect civilians under international law. Families in Sudan's embattled western Darfur region have finally received an emergency increase in food aid that is much needed to help avert looming famine. The World Food Programme said in an update that 5 convoys carrying 5,000 tons of food aid have crossed from neighboring Chad into Darfur. since the beginning of this year. And South Sudan's vice president has said that peace talks in neighboring Kenya have failed to acknowledge the country's peace agreement established in 2018, alleging a new draft agreement is aimed at replacing the original peace deal. An investigation began this morning in Kenya into police conduct during protests against a government plan to impose new taxes. And French President Emmanuel Macron's approval rating has fallen 6 points to match a historic low today, with just over a week before voting starts in the two-round legislative election. The oldest shipwreck ever found in the deep sea has been discovered on the Mediterranean sea floor, shedding light on trade during the late Bronze Age. The 39 to 46-foot-long ship was found roughly 56 miles off the northern coast of Israel at a depth of nearly 6,000 feet during a seafloor survey by a natural gas exploration company. And the U.S. is sending Ukraine air defense missiles that were contracted for purchase by other countries. The decision comes as Ukraine has pleaded with its supporters to send at least 7 Patriot missile systems to defend against Russian assaults that are pummeling the country and targeting energy infrastructure. European Union countries today formally approved the launch of accession negotiations with war-torn Ukraine and Moldova next week, another step in the two nations' long journey to join the 27-nation bloc. Belgium, which currently holds the presidency of the European Union, said member states have agreed on a negotiating framework. 3 weeks after it was approved by Spain's parliament, an amnesty law for Catalan separatists involved in a botched 2017 secession bid is entangled in legal wrangling and has yet to benefit anyone. And the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, says he wants to build a reliable security architecture in the Asia-Pacific region. He made these remarks during a state visit to Vietnam, which is part of a two-nation trip to Asia, viewed by many as a show of defiance to the West. A day after signing this mutual defense agreement with North Korea, Putin received a 21-gun salute at a military ceremony in Vietnam, and he was embraced by 2 of its communist leaders and lavishly praised by one of them. His visit has drawn criticism from the U.S. and its allies, who treat the Russian pariah and have protested that he should not be given a stage to defend the war in Ukraine. South Korea said it could send weapons to Ukraine after Russia signed a security pact with Seoul's biggest regional foe, North Korea. South Korea summoned the Russian ambassador to protest the country's new defense pact with North Korea today, as border tensions continue to rise with vague threats and brief, seemingly accidental incursions by North Korean troops. And the powerful sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un issued a vague threat of retaliation after South Korean activists flew balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang propaganda leaflets across the border. And South Korea's military said it had fired warning shots the previous day to repel North Korean soldiers who briefly crossed the rival's land border for the 3rd time this month. And all this comes 2 days after Moscow and Pyongyang reached a pact vowing mutual defense assistance if either is attacked, and a day after Seoul responded by saying it would consider providing arms to Ukraine to fight Russia's invasion. South Korean soldiers there warning these shots after North Korean troops crossed the border and then retreated. Several North Koreans working within the demilitarized zone buffer that separates the two countries. This weekend, a French-Chinese telescope satellite is set to blast off on a mission to hunt down gamma-ray bursts. These are the most powerful explosions in our universe. And the light from these almighty blasts has traveled billions of light years to reach planet Earth. Due to this, scientists believe they may hold answers to mysteries surrounding the universe's youth. However, these flashes are so brief that they have proved difficult to observe. The U.S. and China resumed semi-official nuclear arms talks for the first time in 5 years, with Beijing's representatives telling U.S. counterparts that they would not resort to atomic threats over Taiwan. The Chinese representatives offered reassurances after their U.S. interlocutors raised concerns that China might use or threaten to use nuclear weapons if it faced defeat in a conflict over Taiwan, and told the U.S. side that they were absolutely convinced that they are able to prevail in a conventional fight over Taiwan without using nuclear weapons. China fleshed out laws aimed at punishing supporters of independence for Taiwan, a move intended to pile pressure on the island's new president. And Taiwan's opposition, Kuomintang, threatened to derail much of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's agenda amid a deepening row of new legislation that would let lawmakers probe President Lai Ching-te's government and summon top officials. Defending champions England brushed aside their struggles in the opening phase of the 2020 World Cup with an 8-wicket victory over the previously unbeaten West Indies in their Super 8 opener at the Darren Sammy National Stadium in St. Lucia. And Surya Kumar Yadav smashed a fine half-century before India's bowler slammed the brakes on Afghanistan's flamboyant shotmakers to romp to a 47-run win in the T20 World Cup yesterday. His 53 was his 19th 50 in the format and helped India post a challenging 181 for 8 in their second-round Super 8's opener. And India will clash with Bangladesh in North Sound in Antigua tomorrow. India has dominated Bangladesh in the format and will start favourites. It will essentially be a contest between India's batters and Bangladesh's bowlers, and Rohit Sharma is expected to score big in this encounter. He has a great record against Bangladesh in T20I cricket and has smashed 451 runs in 12 innings at an average of 37.8 and a strike rate of 141.4, including 550s, and no player in the world has scored more runs against Bangladesh in this format than Rohit Sharma. India will kick off their home cricket season against Bangladesh in September before hosting New Zealand in October and England next year. The Board of Control for Cricket announcing this. India will welcome Bangladesh for a 2-match test series which will be played in Chennai and Kanpur from the 19th through the 23rd of September and from the 27th to the 1st of October, followed by 3 2020s in Dharamsala, Delhi and Hyderabad. They will then host the Black Caps for 3 tests, with the first test starting on the 16th of October in Bengaluru. A Canadian court has rejected an appeal by 2 alleged Khalistan supporters to be taken off a no-fly list they were placed on in 2018. The agency Canadian Press reported that Bhagat Singh Barar and Parvakar Singh Dulai wanted their no-fly designations under the Secure Air Travel Act to be removed. However, the Federal Court of Appeals ruled against their plea, which challenged a judgment from a court last year that upheld their being placed on that list. The court found that the government had reasonable grounds to suspect that their appellants would travel by air to commit a terrorism offense, and the hearings were held on the 13th and 17th of this month, and the decision was delivered yesterday by a 3-judge bench. The 39th anniversary of the worst ever incident of terror in Canadian history is this weekend. In 1985, the terrorist bombing of the aircraft that resulted in the loss of 329 lives, including those of 86 children. Family members of the victims of this terrorist bombing of Air India Flight 182, the Kanishka, have expressed anguish over misinformation over the attack by Khalistani extremists and return of the movement again gaining ground in Canada. This 39th anniversary of the worst ever incident of terror in Canadian history is on the 23rd of this month. And it is a day of remembrance, a national day of remembrance for the victims of terrorism, and memorial services for the victims will be held in Toronto, in Vancouver, Ottawa, and Montreal this Sunday. However, now the secessionist group Seeks for Justice has announced it will organize counter-Khalistan solidarity rallies at the same venues at the same time on this anniversary. The number of visas issued to Chinese nationals by India has seen a sharp drop since the border clash between soldiers of the Indian Army and the People's Liberation Army at Galwan 4 years ago, with the Narendra Modi government focusing sharply on national economic security. 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives at Galwan while trying to push back an attempt by the PLA to nibble at the Indian territory in East Ladakh. Senior officials in the National Security Establishment and Economic Ministries said about 200,000 visas were issued to Chinese nationals in 2019 before the pandemic struck, and in 2020 after the Galwan clash, and the number was brought down to just 2,000 this year after a structural screening of Chinese investments in India. Tibetan spiritual leader the Dalai Lama left for Delhi from Dharamsala today on his way to the United States for his knee surgery. He was wished well by hundreds of Tibetans and devotees that thronged the streets to pay obeisance to the spiritual leader. He'll stay in Delhi today and will reach Switzerland tomorrow and leave for the United States on Sunday. As many as 98 pilgrims have lost their lives in Hajj this year owing to the extreme heat conditions, according to the Ministry of External Affairs in Delhi. A large number of pilgrims visit Hajj every year, and this year 175,000 Indian pilgrims have visited Hajj so far. 98 have died, according to this report. And Prime Minister Modi led the celebrations for the 10th International Yoga Day in Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir. He had to shift his yoga celebrations indoors after showers forced a venue change. Meanwhile, the Union Minister Ram Das Atwale's yoga poses in his poetry went viral. Several Union Ministers and Chief Ministers also joined the yoga celebrations. And stretching, arching his back and kneeling on a mat, Prime Minister Modi led these hundreds of people performing yoga in Kashmir. His visit comes after a series of attacks, including one where 9 people were killed and 33 injured when a bus carrying Hindu pilgrims plunged into a deep gorge after a suspected attack. And June 21st, of course, today, declared International Yoga Day a decade ago, and Modi has since led events at emblematic locations across India and last year the UN headquarters in New York. The Delhi High Court today stayed a trial court's order which granted bail to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the ED's excise policy case probe. The High Court has reserved the order on the ED's petition seeking a stay on this trial court's plea and said that the order will be passed in around 2 or 3 days. Yesterday, the Rouse Avenue Court granted regular bail to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in this money laundering case. And Priyanka Gandhi said that under the BJP, paper leaks turned into a national problem and have ruined the future of millions of youth. The Congress leader, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, today slammed the Narendra Modi government over paper leaks, alleging that BJP's corruption is weakening the country. In the last 5 years, papers for 43 recruitment exams have been leaked in the country, she wrote. Under BJP rule, paper leaks have become a national problem that has ruined the future. And we do have a Delhi Minister Atishi, who began an indefinite fast today over the water crisis in the national capital. She claims Haryana is not providing adequate water to Delhi despite efforts, announced the start of the water satyagraha by paying tribute to Mahatma Gandhi at Rajghat, and then began her fast at Bhogal in Jangpura from noon. Aam Aadmi Party ministers and MLAs, along with Chief Minister Kejriwal's wife Sunita, joined her. Meanwhile, Aam Aadmi Party leaders reached the Tihar jail in anticipation of Kejriwal's release. The Odisha government sponsorship for Hockey India extended till 2036, according to Chief Minister Mohan Maji. He said the decision to extend Odisha's sponsorship of Indian hockey by another 3 years was taken to mark and celebrate the state's 100th year of its formation. He announced the extension of sponsorship of Indian hockey by 3 more years, keeping in mind the goals of Vision Odisha 2036. Between the 1st of March and yesterday, a total of 143 deaths attributed to heat waves and 41,789 cases of heat stroke have been reported across India. The scorching heat wave, particularly affecting northern India, has resulted in the loss of nearly 143 lives nationwide. In Delhi alone, the death toll due to the relentless summer heat reached at least 53 by yesterday. And the minimum temperature in Delhi today settled at 28.4 degrees Celsius, normal for this time of the season. And the Indian Meteorological Department has predicted partly cloudy conditions in the national capital this weekend. Such weather conditions are expected to further bring relief from simmering heat waves. The U.S. State Department has said that Washington supports direct talks between India and Pakistan, but will not tell them how to conduct those discussions. At the regular news briefing in Washington, spokesperson Matthew Miller also emphasized a strong counterterrorism partnership with Pakistan, stating that both countries are committed to maintaining this relationship. There was an all-Pakistan squash final in Malaysia over the weekend. 2 sisters going head-to-head for gold. By the end of it all, Mahanur Ali overcame the challenge of Sehrish Ali to be crowned the under-13 champion of the PBA 20th Penang Malaysia Junior open. And the Punjab government today has imposed Section 144 across the province in light of the prevailing law and order situation, thereby banning protests and public gatherings. This imposition of Section 144 across Punjab comes as the PTI plans to carry out nationwide protests today, demanding the release of incarcerated leader Imran Khan. Assemblies, gatherings, sit-ins, rallies, processions, demonstrations, jalsas, dharnas, protests, and other such activities have been prohibited effective immediately. The purported difference between the PML and PPP on the budget for the upcoming fiscal year stood dissolved after PPP chief Bilawal Bhutto Zardari called on Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to assure him of his party's support for the crucial finance bill. And after months of speculation, a glimpse of Awam Pakistan, the new party on the bloc, appeared on the country's political horizon. And this is Awam Pakistan sharing with the tagline, Awam Pakistan Badlenge Nizam, and it featured a string of despondent citizens asking questions about multiple national issues such as inflation, gas and electricity shortage, corruption, unemployment, and lack of schools for girls. As Pakistan continues to face sizzling heat, weather experts have expected that western winds and rains in upper parts of the country will bring down the temperature by a few notches tomorrow. And hundreds of protesters demanded the safe release of victims of enforced disappearances and have intensified the ongoing protest in Turbat in Balochistan. And hundreds of protesters gathered in front of the district collector's office from Fida Chowk in Turbat, Balochistan, demanding the safe release of victims of enforced disappearances. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you, but I do have your financial news coming up in a separate segment in just a minute. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's get you the financial news that you need to know for today. And today is Friday, the 21st of June. U.S. stock futures wavered below the flat line this morning as a tech-led rally showed real signs of fatigue for the first time in over a week. Futures tied to the benchmark S&P 500 lost around 0.1%, while those tied to the tech-heavy Nasdaq composite fell by around the same amount. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average wobbled below the flat line. U.S. equity futures nudging lower today, while the dollar held at multi-week highs against its global peers as investors looked to a key reading of domestic economic activity to revive the recent tech-led rally. Stocks ended modestly lower yesterday after a pullback in Nvidia, which briefly assumed the title of the world's most valuable stock, lost momentum towards the end of the session yesterday and pulled both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq lower over the final hours of trading. The ongoing artificial intelligence frenzy that briefly made Nvidia Corporation the world's most valuable company this week also drove record inflows into tech funds. About $8.7 billion flowed into tech funds in the week through the 19th of this month. The AI arms race continues apace. Anthropic is launching its newest model called Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which it says can equal or better OpenAI's GPT-4o or Google's Gemini across a wide variety of tasks. The new model is already available to Claude users on the web and on Anthropic, making available to developers as well. Shares of Dell and Supermicro Computer popped after xAI founder Elon Musk said the companies are providing hardware for the supercomputer this AI startup is building. And the moves higher underscore Wall Street's excitement around AI technology. Internal data from the company reveals that 50% of Dell's full-time U.S. workforce and one-third of overseas employees continue to work from home. Internal data from the company revealing 50% of them working from home, and their choice to stay back amid the company's strict calls means they would not be able to climb the corporate ladder unless they agree to work from the office or Dell changes its policy. A union representing flight attendants for American Airlines Group has said yesterday that the latest round of talks with the carrier did not lead to an agreement this week. The Association of Professional Flight Attendants, which represents about 28,000 American Airlines flight attendants, said it has moved closer to a strike as the airline did not present a favorable agreement. CarMax reported a 33% fall in first quarter profit today as lower margins from vehicles sold continue to impact the used vehicle industry. Pre-owned vehicle retailers have had a bumpy ride with the profitability worsening over the last few years as new vehicle availability improved. McDonald's is experiencing a slowdown in growth with its same-store sales lagging behind competitors like Burger King. And this shift in market dynamics comes as fast food chains increasingly pivot towards value-focused meal options to attract budget-conscious consumers. McDonald's, though, is launching that $5 deal that includes a choice of a McDouble or a McChicken sandwich, small fries, 4-piece chicken nuggets, and a small soft drink. The promotion is part of McDonald's efforts to offer affordable options to customers amid rising menu prices and declining disposable income among lower income groups in the United States. Trump media stock has sunk near an all-time low as the SEC declaration may dilute existing holders. Trump Media and Technology Group Corp sank in late trading yesterday after the United States SEC declared effective a regulatory filing that could dilute the shareholders. And Melinda French Gates is one of the most influential philanthropists in the world. As co-founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the largest private charitable foundation in the U.S., she spearheaded donations totaling $77.6 billion in grants since its inception in 2000. However, she'll be resigning from the foundation this month. She wants women to have the opportunities she and many others did not and end gender inequality in the United States. Her work in diversifying opportunities continues at Pivotal Ventures, LLC, which she founded in 2015. And under her vision, Pivotal Ventures has pledged $1 billion to investment and incubation firms supporting initiatives that empower women and people of color in 4 key sectors: politics, technology, finance, and storytelling. Med spas, wellness centers, and online sellers were recently hit with lawsuits by Eli Lilly and Company for providing unapproved compounded versions of drugs used for diabetes management and weight loss. Eli Lilly announced yesterday it published an open letter about counterfeit, fake, and compounded versions of its tirzepatide medications. Odyssey reported that experts believe that one of those medications, known as Mounjaro, originally approved for use as a diabetes medication, could be the next major weight loss drug. Ozempic, another diabetes drug, has become known for causing weight loss. And another version of the drug from Eli Lilly is called Zepbound. Both Mounjaro and Zepbound are not intended for cosmetic weight loss, and they are approved for people aged 18 and older. Vitamix is recalling more than 500,000 blending containers and blade bases sold at retailers nationwide after reports of more than 24 lacerations. The recall involves all Ascent and Venturous Series 8-ounce and 20-ounce blending containers and blade bases, including those repaired as part of a prior recall in August of 2018. The containers can separate from the blender's blade base, which can then expose the blades and create a laceration hazard. About 569,000 of the containers and blade bases were sold by retailers including Best Buy, Costco, Crate & Barrel, Macy's, Target, Walmart, and Williams-Sonoma, and online at Amazon, QVC, and Vitamix from 2017 through this year. And the recalled products sold for between $30 and $990 for the blender and blending containers when sold with other products. Former Vice President Mike Pence's foundation is launching a $10 million campaign to preserve the Trump-era tax cuts that are set to expire after next year, as he presses conservatives not to stray away from that fight before the November election. And Sony Music is reportedly finalizing a deal to purchase the music catalog of the rock band Queen for $1.2 billion. The 10-figure deal would be the most expensive yet in the accelerating race to scoop up the rights to popular music acts. The four-man British band, founded in the late 60s, produced an iconic body of work from the 6-minute symphonic hit Bohemian Rhapsody to stadium favorites We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. The deal includes recording and publishing rights as well as ownership of the band's name, image, and likeness, opening up potential for Broadway shows, films, advertisements, and plenty more. After months of speculation about his future on the show, Kevin Costner has officially confirmed he'll not be returning to Yellowstone. He initially signed on for 1 season, but ended up doing 5 seasons as ranch owner John Dutton due to the show's success. Rumors of his exit were fueled by reports of behind-the-scene tension and schedule conflicts with his movie Horizon, an American Saga. Home building stalled out last month, and builders are not optimistic about the near future. Economists have said more homes need to be built to meet housing demand. And the Federal Reserve's fight against inflation has raised interest rates, keeping many buyers out of the market. Stargazers are getting treated with a sweet strawberry moon today. And although the moon won't be glowing in shades of red, astronomers say catching a glimpse of it is a once-in-a-generation occurrence. And NASA says this will be the lowest full moon of the year, which means the moon illusion will be in full effect. That's an optical illusion where the moon looks larger than normal, because the brain tends to see things that are close to the horizon as larger than they are. A new report is highlighting the most stressed out workers in the country, and it's not firefighters or police officers, but instead our nation's educators. According to a national survey from RAND Corporation, teachers work longer hours and earn less pay than comparable workers, reporting feelings of job-related stress or burnout twice as much as other workers. It can be a source of great contention in many households, especially as the summer months begin to swelter. So is there a magic number you should set your thermostat on to strike a perfect balance between beating the heat and not breaking the bank? And that number is 78 degrees. The temperature could result in significant savings on your energy bill. For every degree above 72, you could save up to 3% on the cost of cooling your home. Families brought kids to pools across Texas yesterday for the world's largest swimming lesson. The World Water Park Association launched the project in 2010 and says 383,000 people in 53 countries have participated since then. Cities and amusement parks in Texas all held swim lessons at the same time yesterday. Hawaiian Falls location in Mansfield and Roanoke had joined. And the town of Prosper has blown up from 2,000 residents in the year 2000 to more than 40,000 now, and they're making plans for even more new neighbors. They've approved a $300 million development that will cover 35 acres near the Dallas North Tollway and Prosper Trail. The developer says the Prosper Arts District will ultimately contain 500 apartments and townhomes, 3 hotels, space for shops, and a parking garage. The Fort Worth Zoo has finished renovations of the mountains and desert section of Texas Wild. The exhibit highlights the habitat and types of animals native to different parts of the state. And the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. upheld a tax on foreign income over a challenge backed by business and anti-regulatory interests, declining their invitation to weigh in on a broader, never-enacted tax on wealth. TikTok filed its first legal briefs yesterday, kicking off the court case over the law forcing a sale or ban of the company from China-based parent company ByteDance. The briefs, filled with the support of 8 U.S.-based TikTok creators, argue that the law violates Americans' right to freedom of expression. And the Biden administration is taking the unprecedented step of banning U.S. companies and citizens from using software made by a major Russian cybersecurity firm because of national security concerns. The U.S. Treasury Department added Japan to its monitoring list for foreign exchange practices, but stopped short of labeling it or any other trade partner as a currency manipulator. While pointing out that Japan intervened to support the yen earlier this year, the Treasury took aim instead at Tokyo's large bilateral trade and current account surpluses. Associations of tea producers in Asia and Africa have flagged concerns over the global mismatch of demand and supply and called for an early restoration of equilibrium. In a meeting of the stakeholders today of the global tea industry, and that was held in Dubai, the association also addressed the issue of quality and long-term sustainability of that sector. Representatives of the East African Trade Association, independent tea producers body of Kenya, and tea associations of Malawi, Bangladesh, and Uganda attended this meeting. And Hilton India has been named the top company to work for in India by Great Place to Work for the second consecutive year. This recognition is based on a comprehensive survey conducted by the global research and consulting firm, which assessed over 5 million employees from more than 1,750 organizations. Hilton is the only hospitality brand in India to hold this top spot for both 23 and 24, and the award ceremony, attended by leading industry executives, took place in Mumbai. In the upcoming budget, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is expected to prioritize infrastructure investment, which is considered vital for generating demand for steel, cement, and other inputs, as well as for creating jobs. The Indian government is seeking to tap funds from the US, Saudi Arabia, and Japan to finance its mega infrastructure ambitions. Precious metals showed mixed trends in the Indian markets today. Gold is trading on the higher side of the multi-commodity exchange, while silver prices have recorded a dip this morning. Gold futures maturing on the 5th of August this year stood at 72,771 rupees per 10 grams after recording a marginal hike of 184 rupees or 0.25%. Meanwhile, silver futures due on the 5th of July witnessed a downfall of 99 rupees or 0.11%. Unlike the outgoing fiscal year, the rupee-dollar parity in Pakistan will likely stay steady in 24-25 as the local currency, the Pakistani rupee, lost just 9 paise against the greenback in the interbank market. And the bulls continue their stampede at the Pakistan Stock Exchange today as shares gained more than 1,200 points to briefly cross the 80,000 level a day after it closed at a now broken all-time high. The Education Ministry and Google have announced a strategic collaboration in Pakistan to improve access to education and support the development of a digital ecosystem for learning, with the agreement also aimed at reducing the number of out-of-school children across the country. And Pakistan Telecommunication Company Limited, in collaboration with Huawei, has conducted the country's first trial of symmetric 50G PON technology that will help implement next-generation fiber optic broadband services in Pakistan. While telecom operators and mobile phone manufacturers have expressed concerns over taxation measures and the subsequent hike in service and set costs after the budget is approved, traders have already started charging higher prices for the current stocks. National and provincial lawmakers from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa continue to forcibly enter grid stations and turn on power supply today, even as the utility company warned such actions could seriously damage the transmission infrastructure. The Pakistani Academy Selection Committee is inviting filmmakers to submit their films for Oscar consideration in the International Feature Film Award category for the 97th Academy Awards by the 15th of August. An international film is defined as a feature-length motion picture of over 40 minutes produced outside of the United States of America and its territories with a predominantly non-English dialogue track. Animated and documentary feature films are permitted. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you, but I do have the final segment of the program coming up in just a minute. Stay with me right here on Community Radio Networks. The final segment of our program here today on Community Radio Networks. It's Friday, the 21st of June, and some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date. Way back in 1779, Spain declared war on Great Britain, creating a de facto alliance with the Americans. Spain's King Charles III would not consent to a treaty of alliance with the U.S. For one imperial power to encourage another imperial power's colonies in revolt was a treacherous game and was unwilling to play. And so it was the Spanish that took West Florida by force and attained East Florida by cession when the war for independence ended, and they were also able to secure the Gulf of Mexico. The British managed to drive the Spanish from Gibraltar, having constructed an 82-foot-long tunnel into the north face of the Rock of Gibraltar, known as the Notch, in order to supply it with cannon. However, King Charles succeeded in his North American goals. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was Spain declaring war against Great Britain on today's date in the year 1779. And in 1788, New Hampshire becomes the ninth and last necessary state to ratify the Constitution of the United States, thereby making the document the law of the land. And it was New Hampshire that became a part of the United States on today's date in 1788. And on this day, in two different years, two future presidents, Zachary Taylor and Richard Nixon, marry the women who will become their first ladies. On this day in 1810, 26-year-old Zachary Taylor married Margaret Smith, aged 31, in her sister's log house in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was also 130 years later, on this day, Richard Milhous Nixon married Patricia Ryan. Pat, as she was known, faithfully supported her husband as he battled communists, war protesters, and the Watergate scandal during his political career. And the couple had two children, Julie and Patricia. Julie married the grandson of former President Dwight Eisenhower, and Patricia married Ed Cox in a White House ceremony in 1971. In addition to Nixon and Taylor, there was John Tyler, William Taft, Woodrow Wilson, and Harry Truman, all celebrating wedding anniversaries in June. But on this particular date, on the 21st, there were these two. Embittered and impoverished, the once mighty Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna dies in Mexico City on today's date in 1876. Determined to crush the Texas rebels, he took command of the Mexican army that invaded Texas in 1836, and his forces successfully defeated the Texas rebels at the Alamo. And he personally ordered the execution of 400 Texan prisoners after the Battle of Goliad. However, these two victories planted the seeds for Santa Anna's defeat. Remember the Alamo? And remember Goliad became the rallying cries for a reinvigorated Texan army. Lulled into overconfidence by his initial easy victories, Santa Anna was taken by surprise at San Jacinto, and his army was annihilated in April of 1836. The captured Santa Anna, fearing execution, willingly signed an order calling for all Mexican troops to withdraw, and Texas became an independent republic. And General Santa Anna died in Mexico City on the 21st of June, today's date, in 1876. The controversial U.S. military expedition against Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa brings the U.S. and Mexico closer to war when Mexican government troops attack U.S. Brigadier General Pershing's forces in Mexico. The Americans suffered 22 casualties and more than 30 Mexicans were killed. Against the protests of the government, Pershing's forces had been penetrating deep into Mexico in pursuit of Pancho Villa. After routing the small Mexican force, the U.S. expedition continued on its southern course. And John Pershing's forces attacked by Mexican troops on today's date in the year 1916. Swarms of admirers mobbed the Hollywood film actors Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, who arrive in London on their honeymoon on today's date in the year 1920. Two of the film's earliest stars, Pickford and Fairbanks, had been business partners since 1919, when they teamed up with Charlie Chaplin and director D.W. Griffith to form United Artists. As a wedding present for Pickford, Fairbanks bought an estate boasting 22 rooms and Beverly Hills' first swimming pool. The couple dubbed the sprawling property Pickfair. and married in March of 1920, 3.5 weeks after her divorce from her first husband. They left New York on the Red Star cruise liner Lapland for a much-delayed honeymoon in Europe, as reported in the New York Times. Arriving in London, the pair were mobbed to such an extent that they had to spend a weekend at Lord Northcliffe's place in the Isle of Thanet and another at one of the country seats of the Duke of Sutherland. It was Hollywood stars Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks who were mobbed by these crowds on today's date in 1920 when they landed in London. On the 21st of June in 1942, General Erwin Rommel turns his assault on the British Allied garrison at Tobruk in Libya into victory as his Panzer Division occupies the North African port. Britain had established control of Tobruk after routing the Italians in 1940, but the Germans attempted to win it back by reinforcing Italian troops with the Afrika Korps of Erwin Rommel, who continually charged the British Eighth Army in battles around Tobruk, finally forcing the Brits to retreat into Egypt. And it was on today's date in 1942 that the Allies surrendered at Tobruk in Libya. And Adolf Hitler awarded Rommel the Field Marshal's baton as reward for his victory. "I'm going on to Suez," was his promise. Playwright Arthur Miller defies the House Committee on Un-American Activities and refuses to name suspected communists. His defiance of McCarthyism won him a conviction for contempt of court, which was later reversed by the Supreme Court. His passport had already been denied when he tried to go to Brussels to attend the premiere of his play, The Crucible, about the Salem witch trials. Arthur Miller refuses to name the communists on today's date in 1956. And Michael Schwerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney are killed by a Ku Klux Klan mob near Meridian in Mississippi on today's date in 1964. The three young civil rights workers were working to register black voters in Mississippi, thus inspiring the ire of the local Klan. These deaths caused a national outrage, and when the desegregation movement encountered resistance in the early 1960s, CORE, C-O-R-E, the Congress of Racial Equality, set up an interracial team to ride buses into the Deep South to help protest. These so-called Freedom Riders were viciously attacked when the first two buses arrived in Alabama, and one bus was firebombed and the other boarded by KKK members who beat the activists inside. And these three civil rights activists were killed on today's date in 1964. And then we have, on today's date, in the year 1965,
and there is no place I'm going to.
The Byrds' debut album.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you.
Mr. Tambourine Man marks the beginning of the folk rock revolution. In just a few months, the Byrds had become a household name with a #1 single and a smash hit album that married the ringing guitars and backbeat of the British invasion with the harmonies and lyrical depth of folk to create an entirely new sound.
My weariness amazes me, I'm branded on my feet. I have no one to meet. And the ancient empty streets.
Perhaps someone else could have listened to the bright guitar lines of the Beatles' Ticket to Ride and to Bob Dylan's original Mr. Tambourine Man and had the idea of somehow combining the two, but neither of those recordings existed when the Byrds' Roger McGuinn devised his group's new sound. Newly signed to Columbia Records, Roger McGuinn devised his group's new sound and had access to an early demo version of Mr. Tambourine Man that you are listening to right now. Even before their label mate Bob Dylan had had a chance to record it for his own upcoming album.
My senses have been stripped, my hands can't feel the grip, my toes too numb to step, wait only for my boot heels to be wandering. I'm ready to go anywhere, I'm ready for to fade into my own parade. Cast your dancing spell my way, I promise to go under it. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play.
Mr. Tambourine Man, released in the folk rock revolution, began on today's date in 1965. John Hinckley Jr., who on the 30th of March in 1981 shot President Reagan and 3 others outside a Washington, D.C. hotel, is found not guilty of attempted murder by reason of insanity. And that happened on today's date in 1982. In the trial, his defense attorneys argue that their client was ill with narcissistic personality disorder, citing medical evidence, and had a pathological obsession with the 1976 film Taxi Driver, in which the main character attempts to assassinate a fictional senator. His lawyers claim that Hinckley had watched the movie more than a dozen times, was obsessed with the lead actress Jodie Foster, and had attempted to reenact the events of the film in his own life. The movie, not Hinckley, they successfully argued, was the actual planning force behind the events that occurred on the 30th of March in 1981. But he was found not guilty on today's date in 1982. An earthquake near the Caspian Sea in Iran kills an estimated 50,000 people and injures another 135,000 on today's date in 1990. This 7.7 magnitude tremor wreaked havoc on the simply constructed houses in that area. 30 minutes past midnight, with most people sleeping in their homes, this violent quake centered along the shores of the Caspian Sea in northwestern Iran shattered the nighttime tranquility. A 20,000 square mile area in the provinces of Zanjan and Gilan was absolutely devastated. Worldwide relief efforts were undertaken. The Iranian government grudgingly accepted assistance from the U.S., though it refused help from Israel and South Africa because of Iran's tenuous relations with their home nations. Many relief workers from Western nations were sent home after only a brief time and before critical assistance could be provided. On the 21st of June in 2004, Spaceship One becomes the first privately owned spacecraft to reach an altitude of 100 kilometers, or about 62 miles above the Earth, the generally accepted point at which space begins. Pilot Melville, the sole crew member, took Spaceship One, or SS-1 for short, to an altitude of 100.12 kilometers, just past the invisible boundary line, before beginning the long glide back to Earth. When he landed at what is now the Mojave Air and Spaceport in Mojave, California, he had become the first commercial astronaut in history, and the flight lasted 24 minutes. The SS-1 was retired after winning the X Prize and now resides at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., also home to the Voyager. Do want to mention that Benazir Bhutto, the first female Prime Minister of Pakistan, was born on today's date in 1953. And Prince William, the heir to the British throne, born also on today's date in 1982. And Frida Kahlo, the first Hispanic woman honored on U.S. postage stamps, was born on today's date in 2001. I'll tell you about some events that are happening in town this weekend and the coming weekends. Don't forget, stargazers, get ready for that sweet strawberry moon tonight. And although the moon won't be glowing in any shades of red, astronomers can say catching a glimpse of it is a once-in-a-generation occurrence. And NASA says this will be the lowest full moon of the year, which means the moon illusion will be in full effect. That's an optical illusion where the moon looks larger than normal because the brain tends to see things that are close to the horizon as larger than they are. It won't be red, but it'll be colorful. The strawberry moon tonight will follow a low, shallow path across the sky, meaning moonlight will travel through more of the Earth's atmosphere, and that should give it this orange, yellow, or this golden hue. It will appear full for about 3 days from today and will reach peak illumination today at 9:08 p.m. Eastern Time, so 8 o'clock our time. We also have other events that are happening here in town. And the Radha Krishna Temple invites you today to their opening of their yoga festival. It's a 3-day festival that opens this evening. And tomorrow from 8 to 4, Burnout to Balance, a day filled with activities for the body, mind, and soul at the Collin College Conference Center on Wade Boulevard in Frisco. Yoga4unity.com, and 4 is the digit 4. Mahatma Gandhi Memorial of North Texas, in partnership with the Consulate General of India, inviting you to the International Day of Yoga this Sunday from 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning at the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial Plaza in Irving. And we do also have next weekend the King's return. A special thanks for the community's support of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. Morton Meyerson is presenting this free concert featuring the incredible talent of Dallas natives, King's return. Shankar Ehsan Loy live in concert on the evening of Saturday the 29th. This legendary trio will be at the Toyota Music Factory in Las Colinas on Saturday the 29th. Also on Saturday the 29th, Nan's Vision presents Dallas's Glamorous Night with Shilpa Shetty at the Grandian Event Center in Frisco. If you'd like to be a part of this, please call 469-305-6836. And of course, the 2020 World Cup continues in the West Indies, and I know you all keep track of it, but do remember that starting the 5th of July, the 2024 Texas Super Kings schedule their season against the LA Knight Riders, 7:30 in the evening at the Grand Prairie Stadium on the Friday, the 5th of July. We have Salim Suleiman coming into town on the 3rd of July during that long weekend. Ellen DeGeneres will be in Dallas on the 10th of July. And we also do have a Cricket Academy grand launch happening here in our Dallas-Fort Worth area on Sunday the 14th. And the hitman is coming to Texas, and that is Rohit Sharma. Cricket Kingdom, in partnership with the DFW Indoor Sports, opening the Cricket Academy by Rohit Sharma, all set to make its grand debut on Sunday, the 14th of July. And if you'd like to be a part of this event, please call Shalu. Her number is 201-245-6299, 201-245-6299. The Carom Grandmasters Tournament happening on the 19th, 20th, and 21st of July. And the 2024 North Texas Job Fair, hosted by U.S. Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne in partnership with the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce, is happening on the 8th of August. 10th of August at the Grand Center in Plano, a musical program called Yade, remembering the songs of Kishore Kumar, Lata Mangeshkar, and Muhammad Rafi. Also, Wellness and Workplace Conference happening on the 22nd of August by the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce. The 47th Anand Bazaar, celebrating 77 years of India's independence, being brought to you by the India Association of North Texas on the 31st of August at the Frisco Rough Riders Stadium. This is the biggest event that the community brings to town. And Sister Shivani, living a life of hope, light, and love. She joined the Brahma Kumaris here as they welcome Sister Shivani, a globally renowned spiritual teacher and motivational speaker. She guides us with ancient wisdom to bring hope and clarity in times of confusion and chaos. Sunday, the 8th of September from 2 to 4 at the Credit Union of Texas Event Center in Allen. And for those of you that missed, or those that would like to see it again, the Broadway-style Mughal-e-Azam will be in Dallas on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of September, and there will be 4 shows. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my show for today. I have huge thanks going out to the supporters of community radio networks. Thanks going out to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, the Ahluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, Michaelachi, Ruchi Palace by Michaelachi, Shri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Eggholic in Irving, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. Thank you very much for your support of community radio networks. You all make this program possible every day. And for those that would like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my show for today.